Keanu Reeves arrived at this cozy restaurant with a terrace, hoping to spend a quiet evening and enjoy the atmosphere. Little did he know that very soon, he would have to stand up for someone who couldn't defend itself. This simple act would forever change everything around him, and no one could have predicted where this seemingly ordinary encounter would lead. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and don't miss new videos every day at 2 o'clock. Keanu Reeves was walking along the terrace of this small but pleasant open-air restaurant. He was dressed very modestly, dark jeans, a plain black t-shirt with no prints, and comfortable sneakers. None of the guests could have guessed that one of the most famous actors in the world had just joined them. He behaved, as usual, calmly and unassumingly, never one to flaunt wealth or status. A gentle smile played on his lips, and his eyes roamed over the surroundings with a hint of thoughtfulness. He sat down at a table near the railing overlooking a picturesque view. A soft sunset bathed everything in a golden glow, and the fresh evening air carried the scent of flowers alongside the faint hum of the city. That evening, the restaurant seemed filled with a relaxed, warm atmosphere. On the terrace were several groups, a small family celebration here, a casual gathering there, all enjoying friendly conversation. Attentive servers moved between tables, smiling politely as they took orders. Only one table stood out from the harmonious setting. A man in a gray blazer sat there, and he had already managed to make the waitress look somewhat frightened and uncomfortable. He loudly complained about trivialities: the water wasn't cold enough, or the fan was too strong and messing up his hair. A few guests cast sidelong glances, understanding he was looking for any excuse to vent his irritation. Keanu watched from the corner of his eye, trying not to interfere in someone else's business. But suddenly his attention was drawn by a quiet noise near his table. Under his chair lay a small dog, apparently a stray, with brown fur, looking thin and neglected. It seemed starved, having come in hopes of finding a morsel of food that might have dropped from a table. The dog watched Keanu with pleading eyes, as though silently begging for help but afraid to get too close for fear of being kicked away. Feeling compassion, Keanu gently called the dog, extending his hand so it would know it wouldn't be hurt. The dog slowly approached and sniffed his fingers. For the dog, this might have been the only chance that day to experience kindness. Keanu quietly took a few small pieces of meat from the plate and handed them to the dog, watching it eat with trembling jaws. Everything happened so discreetly that no one around even noticed this little moment of humanity, except for one person. The man in the gray blazer, who had just been intimidating the waitress, noticed Keanu feeding the stray dog. He raised his eyebrows as though witnessing something outrageous, clearly seeing an opportunity to unleash his pent-up irritation on a new target. With a loud cough, he made sure everyone noticed his displeasure, then addressed Keanu. "Hey, you! Can't you see that's a filthy stray? You can't just allow a mutt like that to wander around a decent place." Keanu frowned slightly but continued petting the dog in an attempt to calm it. He wasn't looking for conflict, yet he wouldn't turn the animal away. The man, meanwhile, sensing a chance to assert dominance, got up from his chair and walked over to Keanu. "So, you folks decided to turn this place into a shelter for mangy creatures? You know, people come here to relax, not to watch ragged dogs." Keanu tried to remain calm. He answered in a quiet tone. "No one among us is perfect, and nobody needs luxury to deserve a warm welcome. I think offering a little food to this dog won't hurt anyone." "How would you know?" the man snapped back. "Maybe this dog has fleas. Maybe it's diseased." Servers nearby looked on anxiously, and guests began turning their heads. But the man, ignoring their disapproval, seemed to relish feeling in control. He jabbed his finger at the dog. "Get rid of that creature right now. Or should I call the manager? I'm paying money here, and I don't care if someone wants to show off their cheap compassion act." The dog flattened its ears in fear. It was used to being yelled at but didn't understand why someone kept trying to drive it away. Keanu stood up from his chair and knelt beside the dog, gently stroking its neck. "Please, Don't shout, he said calmly. If you're so bothered by this dog, I'll take responsibility. But there's no need to be rude. The restaurant's reputation isn't going to be ruined by one little dog. The man shot Keanu a contemptuous look and hissed through clenched teeth. Oh, so you're one of those kind-hearted types? Trying to boost your sorry reputation? Be a real man, just give it a kick and send it packing. You'll be better off. His words were so cruel that several guests were visibly stunned. The waitress, standing nearby, swallowed nervously. The once romantic ambience had shifted, everyone was absorbed in the tension unfolding. Keanu felt indignation welling up inside him but remained calm. I'm not going to use violence against anything or anyone. If you think this dog doesn't belong here, I'll take it with me and find it a home. The man let out a scornful laugh. You want to play the savior? You look like just another nobody off the street. I don't care about your so-called noble intentions. Are your other broke friends gonna start wandering in here too, looking for scraps? His words dripped with the desire to belittle his opponent, to portray him as worthless. Confident in his own superiority, he never suspected he was speaking to a renowned actor. Keanu, by habit, didn't flaunt his fame. Meanwhile, the waitress, her name was Alina, stepped forward to address the man. Excuse me, sir, but maybe we could avoid making such a fuss. We could seat you at another table if you don't like. Shut up, he cut her off sharply, causing Alina to recoil as if burned. A few people at nearby tables started whispering to each other. Most clearly disapproved, yet no one dared to intervene directly. Keanu realized he would have to do something to defend not only the dog but also the waitress who had been on the receiving end of this tirade. Behind the gray-blazered man, an entire group of curious onlookers had formed. Many felt an uncomfortable tension. Nobody wanted to dive headfirst into a fight, but it was also distressing to see someone bullied with no defense. The atmosphere was loaded. Just a little more pressure and the man's negativity might escalate into a serious confrontation. Fine, if you're so stubborn, the man sneered, looking at Keanu, show me how you're gonna rescue that dog. Maybe someone will give you a medal for being humane. Keanu knew harsh words wouldn't change his mind. He glanced around and saw the dog pressed close against his leg, seeking protection or sensing a genuine kindness in this person. Finally, a few other guests spoke up to support Keanu. Could we please leave the dog alone? It's not bothering anyone, suggested an elderly gentleman at a far table. Exactly, there's no harm in letting it stay. And if you find it so upsetting, sir, maybe there's another table, added a woman in her 30s. The man in the gray blazer gave everyone a spiteful glare. He clearly didn't want anyone doubting his authority. He waved them off. You're all out of your minds if you think letting strays hang around is okay. And you, he turned back to Keanu, I'm going to teach you a lesson. It's time someone put these do-gooders in their place. A flicker of anger lit Keanu's eyes, though he remained composed. Then the man made another move, grabbing the napkin holder from his table as if to throw it at the dog. Keanu stepped forward resolutely and said firmly, "Stop. Don't do that." A confident note in his voice made the man freeze. He eyed Keanu, briefly recognizing something he hadn't noticed before. But after a moment, the man scoffed. "Oh, so you're a hero now? Go on, try to stop me. Or should I call security to kick you and your dog out?" The terrace grew quieter as everyone waited to see how this standoff would end. Would there be a fight, or was there another way out? Maintaining his calm, Keanu said, "If you believe force solves the issue, you're mistaken. Did it ever cross your mind that this dog is just a living creature in need of help? Why pick on it to vent your frustration?" "Oh, should I have taken it out on you?" the man snarled. "I don't want to fight, but I won't let you harm the defenseless." A pause settled. The man hesitated, seemingly wanting to continue but aware the onlookers supported Keanu. As a final argument, he pulled out his phone and announced loudly. "I'm going to record this, show everyone how you all love to cuddle stray mutts. Maybe the police will be interested in what you're doing in a public place." Keanu sighed. He didn't want to ruin anyone's evening, but he also couldn't allow the cruelty to continue against the dog, the waitress, or those who had spoken up. Some guests stood up, ready to intervene, but Keanu calmly raised his hand to signal them to wait. A memory suddenly flooded Keanu's mind, almost like a flashback, of when he was a teenager and found an injured kitten on the street. Without hesitation, he spent all his money to take the kitten to a vet. His parents hadn't understood at first, but he felt it was the right thing to do. That moment taught him the powerful impact a small act of kindness can have. He realized he must do what was right now, just as he did back then. Meanwhile, the man in the gray blazer, seeing that shouting wasn't getting him anywhere, stepped closer with a more intimidating approach, shrinking the distance as though cornering Keanu. "You think you're so smart," he hissed. "I'll tell you this, get out of here with that dog before I make real trouble for you." Keanu answered quietly. "I'm not leaving until you understand that cruelty doesn't solve anything." The man smirked. "And who are you to teach me?" Then, abruptly, he kicked the dog with his foot. The dog let out a yelp and jumped aside, nearly knocking over a plate on a nearby table. Instantly, Keanu reached out and intercepted the man's movement, barely touching his arm, but there was definite strength in his gesture. The man stumbled, unprepared for such a reaction. Yet Keanu did it gently, trying not to escalate into a brawl. "I'm asking you not to touch the dog again," Keanu said curtly. Outrage rippled through the surrounding crowd. People voiced their disapproval. "Hey, you can't do that. Are you crazy, hurting an animal? This is too much." Sympathy for the dog spread among the guests. The man sneered, but his voice carried a nervous edge. "Ha! I don't care what you all think. Maybe I'll teach this hero a lesson next." Keanu inhaled deeply, restraining his anger. At that moment, the restaurant manager, a tall man in his 40s, stepped in, trying to calm the situation. "Gentlemen, please. We don't want to call the police. Let's settle this civilly. Maybe the dog shouldn't be here, but we can't allow cruelty. Our restaurant has a policy of humane treatment toward animals. If you'd like, sir," he turned to the man in the blazer, "I can offer you a table away from the terrace. Either you throw that dog and his defender out," the blazer man interrupted, "or I'm filing a complaint against your establishment." The manager glanced at Keanu and the dog in dismay, clearly not wanting a scandal but also unwilling to tarnish the restaurant's reputation. Keanu, standing nearby, spoke to the manager with a polite yet firm tone. "Please don't worry. I'll cover any expenses. I'll take care of the dog if necessary. But there's no reason to give in to aggression." The man in the gray blazer snorted, glaring at Keanu with haughty disdain. He was about to hurl another insult when he heard a nearby waitress whisper to a coworker. "He looks so much like that actor, you know, Keanu Reeves. But he's dressed so simply. Maybe it's not him." She spoke loud enough for the man to hear. He studied Keanu's face more closely, trying to figure out if this really was the famous actor everyone talked about. A tense hush fell as more people tried to decide if it was truly him. Could it really be Keanu? Came hushed voices from a few people. "No way," someone replied uncertainly. "I'd recognize him anywhere. Look at his features." The man in the gray blazer blinked and glanced around. People were already standing up, some taking out their phones, others still hesitating, while some were ecstatic at a possible brush with their favorite actor. The man's gaze flickered between Keanu, the waitress, and the guests trying to confirm his identity. When he looked carefully at Keanu's eyes and face, the man's self-assurance began to melt away. "This can't be," he muttered. "What the? If it's true." Seeing that everyone was on edge, Keanu decided to defuse the tension. He spoke calmly but firmly. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is that no one deserves cruel treatment, whether human or animal. By then, many recognized him outright. The low-key politeness, the unmistakable face, there was little doubt. The man in the gray blazer took a couple of steps back, suddenly aware that he had hurled insults in front of a world-famous actor adored by millions. Several people were already recording on their phones. Realizing he now looked terrible on camera, the man paled. A long moment of silence followed. Then came murmurs. He's always known for being so humble. It's just like him to stand up for a stray. He prefers to keep a low profile to avoid attention. The man in the blazer felt the ground slipping from under his feet. Moments ago, he was trying to show his superiority by humiliating another person and a defenseless animal. Now, it turned out that, the other person was a global star beloved by fans everywhere. And his arrogant attitude had turned into a major embarrassment. He realized he was on camera, exposed as someone who terrorized a stray dog. I didn't, he stammered. I didn't know. He fumbled for excuses, his eyes darting from face to face, only to find them all condemning him. Even the dog, peeking out from behind Keanu's legs, regarded him with large, sad eyes as if to say, "Are you satisfied with what you've done?" Keanu had no intention of mocking the humiliated man. He only wanted to protect the dog and ensure that cruelty would end. Recognizing the man's distress, Keanu gave him a chance to save face, if only slightly. In a calm voice, he said, "I'm not angry at you, but I want you to understand your actions. Cruelty is never justified. We all have bad days, stress, problems, but that's no excuse to hurt others." Clearing his throat, the man wiped sweat from his brow. He felt like he'd been caught red-handed. Struggling to retain any sense of dignity, he muttered, "Well, I just don't like dirty animals in a restaurant." "There's nothing wrong with valuing cleanliness," Keanu replied, "but it's a problem if you use violence and humiliation to deal with discomfort." A hint of shame flickered across the man's face, mixed perhaps with fear of public scorn. People nearby stood in a cluster, some clapping spontaneously while others whispered, "Serves him right," or "Now he'll know how it feels when your pride is trampled." The restaurant manager approached Keanu hesitantly and spoke in a low voice. "Mr. Keanu, I'm sorry about all this. We never expected such a conflict. Would you like to move to our best table? We'd be honored to treat you on the house." "Thank you for the offer," Keanu responded gently, "but I'd just like to make sure no one gets hurt, neither this dog, nor the waitress, nor you. I'll gladly pay for everything, as long as this trouble ends here." Then Keanu placed a reassuring hand on Alina's shoulder, the waitress who had been insulted. "I'm sorry you got caught up in this unpleasant scene." Alina smiled timidly. "It's okay. Thank you for standing up for me." The man in the blazer, still hovering nearby, mumbled, "Yeah, well, I didn't mean. It's just been a rough day." He paused before adding, "Sorry." His apology sounded half-hearted, but at least he stopped shouting. Keanu and the dog settled at a small empty table in the corner of the terrace, where Alina brought the dog a bowl of water. Guests continued murmuring among themselves. Some excited to be near a famous actor, others still shaking their heads at the man's behavior. Feeling everyone's eyes on him, the man in the blazer insisted on getting his check. But inside, he must have realized how humiliated and exposed he was. After a few minutes, the tension began to dissipate. The waitstaff returned to their duties, the manager tried to maintain composure, and the patrons gradually went back to their meals and conversations. Still, one could hear whispers, "I can't believe that was really Keanu," or "He's incredible, standing up for a stray dog." Sitting back at his table, the man in the blazer looked uncomfortable, glancing occasionally at Keanu and the dog. He seemed torn between reigniting the argument and leaving to avoid further embarrassment. At last, after downing his drink, he got up and headed for the exit. Offering a final scowl to the crowd, he didn't say another word. His tight-lipped expression hinted at a mix of shame, anger, and regret. Once he left, it felt as though the atmosphere instantly cleared. Some people approached Keanu, hoping for a photo, but he politely declined, indicating a preference to keep this evening free of flashbulbs. Respecting his wishes, they settled for warm words of gratitude. "Thank you for saving that dog," said an older woman who had been seated nearby. "It's nice to see there are still caring people out there." Keanu nodded with a slight smile. "Thank you for understanding." "What will you do with the dog now?" asked another patron. "I plan on finding him a home, maybe I'll take him myself." "I love animals," Keanu answered. Many commented among themselves that this perfectly matched Keanu Reeves's known persona, humble, kind, and never seeking praise. The dog rested at his feet, eyes shining with sincere gratitude. Deep down, Keanu felt he'd taken one more step toward genuine compassion. Many years ago, he had realized how important even the smallest gestures could be. As the turmoil subsided, Alina brought Keanu a drink, her hands still trembling from excitement. "I never dreamed of meeting you in person, let alone watching you stand up for a little dog." Keanu smiled kindly. "I just did what anyone should have done. Please, don't worry about me. You know, I've heard so many stories about your kindness and humility, but seeing it is something else," Alina said. "Humility," Keanu repeated softly. "Maybe I do enjoy the simple things, quiet streets, old books, small joys. And it seems that in this restaurant, people can also appreciate peace, except for those who try to spoil it." Alina laughed softly. "To be honest, you're even more down-to-earth than I imagined." The dog let out a small bark, as if to say, "Don't forget about me." Keanu chuckled and patted his new friend. "He deserves a good name, now that we've bonded," Keanu mused aloud. "Yes, and he's earned a chance," Alina agreed. "It's wonderful that you're not abandoning him." A few people at other tables watched them from a distance. Now no one viewed the dog with disdain, in fact, several wanted to pet it or grab a picture. But Keanu tried to shield the dog from the spotlight, aware it was already shaken by the day's events. Time passed and the restaurant's life returned to normal. People went back to savoring their meals and gentle background music. The manager approached with a courteous question. "Mr. Reeves, if you'd like, we can bring out a dish for the dog so he can eat something more substantial." "Thank you, that would be wonderful." "Please add it to my bill," Keanu replied. Eager to oblige, the manager quickly arranged it. Alina brought over a bowl with a bit of boiled meat and fresh water. The dog ate calmly, occasionally looking up at those around it. Quite a few patrons noticed what had happened, and some discreetly recorded the entire incident. Videos soon appeared on social media, where they began to gain traction. Many were moved. It's not often one sees a celebrity who not only shuns publicity but also rescues a stray dog from abuse. Keanu himself didn't pay much attention to whether cameras captured the event. Far more important was that the dog was safe and that those witnessing the situation might think about choosing kindness over indifference. He wasn't concerned if this made the news or got millions of views online. The main thing was that justice and humanity had prevailed here tonight. Gradually, the sun dipped below the horizon. The terrace grew dim, illuminated by only a few lights and a glow from the tables. Keanu sat, sipping a drink, while the dog rested at his feet, its eyes half closed in contentment. Alina found a small blanket for the dog to lie on, so it could be warmer. Keanu considered how he would get the dog to a vet, maybe early the next day. But first, he had something else to do, address those who were still present. When a brief lull fell over the terrace, Keanu spoke in a gentle tone. "My friends, I want to thank all of you for not standing by silently. Our lives are made up of countless small choices, to help or to ignore, to hurt or to support, to notice or turn away. As we saw tonight, even a simple act of kindness can change someone's fate. People listened attentively. Some who had been inside came out onto the terrace to hear Keanu Reeves speak. He continued. "This dog, who can't speak, has already expressed gratitude in the way he looks at us. And if one person today took a step toward kindness, others will do the same tomorrow. That's how a chain of goodness is formed." He glanced at the dog and smiled. We may never know what he's been through, but any wounds can be healed with care and time. If any of you get a chance to help another being, please seize it, whether it's a person or an animal. We all want the same thing, love and acceptance. Keanu's words deeply moved those around him. Some applauded, others shed tears of sympathy. The restaurant's atmosphere noticeably shifted, infused with a gentle inspiration that made people smile more openly at one another. After a while, people began to leave. Some of them thanked Keanu for his example of kindness and humility, asking if he really would take the dog home. He nodded, now certain of the dog's fate. Mentally, he was already planning how to introduce the dog to a safe, comfortable new life. Before heading out, Keanu felt a sense of contentment. What started as a simple plan to enjoy dinner had turned into a real lesson in humanity for everyone who witnessed it. The ugly incident with the aggressive man ironically led to a deeper reflection among the patrons about compassion. Sometimes, the worst situations create the strongest reminders that we should all treat one another with respect. At the payment counter, Keanu settled his bill. The manager took his money hesitantly. "Mr. Reeves, it's an honor you chose our restaurant. I'm so sorry about the commotion." "No worries," Keanu replied. "I'm just glad it ended well. Please don't blame yourself. People vary, and we can't always predict their behavior. What matters is that the dog is safe now." He left a generous tip, then, with the dog in his arms, walked to the exit. The restaurant staff and guests saw him off with quiet applause and warm smiles. Many would remember the evening as a heartening event. Stepping out onto the street lit by lampposts, Keanu felt a unique kind of happiness. Even the smallest act of compassion, whether for a stray dog or someone in need, can change the course of events. Perhaps this story would spread online, gathering countless views, but that wasn't the point. What truly mattered was the seed of kindness planted in people's hearts, a seed that might grow into more acts of empathy and care. Never underestimate the power of compassion. Sometimes one small step toward a helpless creature can spark a genuine miracle. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this story. And remember, each of us has the power to change someone's life for the better by showing just a little kindness.